Hi, I'm Wesley Moorhead, instructor for Center Marine Training Safety, Teeks Galveston. This is my assistant, Eric Fry. All right, what we're going to be doing for you today here is setting up a anchoring system. Okay, this is a very confusing part of oil spill operations. It's important that the anchor system is set up correctly because if it doesn't, it'll fail, and you potentially have to pull in all your boom and then reset it. So the first thing Eric's going to do is set up T-posts. All right, we have two T-posts, both at an approximate almost 45-degree angle. All right, the next step is what is called a tie-back line. He's going to tie a clove hitch to the top of the first or front T-post. And then any type of knot at the back T-post for it to hold. And the purpose for this is so that way if the boat starts to pull on the front one and the front T-post begins to fail, the second T-post will then pick up its weight and actually continue to hold, and you won't lose the whole shoreside anchoring system. All right, the next step, he's going to set up the boom and actually fake it back and forth. It's important that whenever you do fake it back and forth, that the actual top side of the boom is on the top. I know that seems silly to say, but it's very common for people to have rolls and twists in it, and obviously your boom is not effective if there's a roll in it. Oil will just get either over on top of it or under it, and so on. After you fake out all the boom, the next step is going to be actually adding the tow bridles to the ends of the boom. If you look on the end of the booms, you actually have what's called a connector right here, and you don't ever want to pull on a single point on the connector because it will actually maybe end up having your boom fail on one side or the other. So by using a tow bridle, we can actually distribute an even pull on the end of the connector. So it's important anytime, either on the shore side or the anchor side, to always use a tow bridle when pulling the boom. The next step is going to be actually setting up the shoreside line right here using an actual shackle. We'll shackle these two together. As far as the length of line, you want to use whatever the length is between the shoreline and the anchor system, plus about 15 to 20 feet, because that's the amount of slack you'll probably pull back in once you drop the anchor system. The last step is actually setting up the physical anchor system. It's important to get all these parts in the right places or your anchor system might not hold. The first line you're going to have is what's called the scope tension line. And this line right here adds a little bit of extra space between your anchor system and the end of your boom. If you don't have this line, the boom will actually start to fail at the actual anchor side. It can actually begin to pull down on it if your anchor system gets taut. Then you're going to have a buoy. This buoy right here is the first buoy in the system. It marks actually where your anchor system is. And then whenever you begin to pull it, you're going to disconnect from the same buoy. But you have two separate shackles here. One shackle goes to your scope tension line. Your other shackle actually goes to the buoy. It's important to use two here because if you have only one shackle and one begins to fail, then you lose the whole system. For redundancy, you use two. Then you have your anchor line. And this line right here is going to be 50 feet long because the depth of the water is about 10 feet. You want this to be 3 to 5 times the depth of the water. It's important because if it's taut, your anchor system won't hold, and when the tide rises, it's going to pull right up. But the longer it is, typically the better. The only time you might have a problem with having a line that's too long is if your body of water is too narrow and you're going to reach the other side before your anchor system is all the way out. Here you have your physical anchor system. All right, you can either do 1 or 2 anchors. 1 anchor is not as good as 2. 2 is definitely going to be for more deeper water purposes, and you know if you're going to leave your boom out there for a longer period of time. But for this purpose, we're just going to use 1 anchor. And this line right here is called the retrieval line. Quite simply, it's the line you pull from whenever you're ready to retrieve your whole anchor system. A lot of people don't put this line out, but if you want your anchor system back, it's pretty important you don't pull from the actual anchor side. For us, we're just going to use the depth of water plus or minus the tide, so we have here a 15-foot line for a 10-foot depth with a 5-foot tidal change. Same thing on this side with the buoy. You actually have 2 separate shackles, one again for your buoy, another one for your actual tow line. Then last but not least, you have your tow line that actually goes to the boat. All right, you want to make sure you have this line here because if you don't, then your buoy is going to rest right up against your tow bit, and that's not desired. Then you have one last shackle that's going to go actually hooking into what we call our quick release, so that way you can safely release the system without any issues. For deployment of the anchor system, you want to make sure you have a 30-degree angle between you and the shoreline, or between the boom and the shoreline, and that's imperative so that way you don't get what's called entrainment. Now, as the speed of the current starts to increase, you're going to also increase that angle into the current so that way oil doesn't get past it. But you can see here, he's got the anchor system all the way out with the boom straight. There's a little bit of a gap between the boom and the shoreline, which is good and okay, because once he drops the anchor system, you're going to let it sit on the ground for 30 seconds. Then you're going to pull in that slack, and it's going to rest up nicely against the shoreline for a great coverage. The only thing that's also important is that you make sure you have enough boom on shore for when your tide rises, the tide and the oil does not go around the boom, and then you're having to re-pull your system and pull it back. For the release, we have our quick release right here. It's important that your quick release has all the slack out of it and the actual device is right up against the T-post, because if I pull this and there's a lot of slack, it will come back and hit you in the face. Right here you have your quick release hooked up with the shackle, then you can see from here, your anchor system is straight with the boom. As far as the 30-degree angle, you have to trust the person on shore. For the people in the boat, the angle always looks off because it's just not the same as the people that are on shore. But when you're ready to release, you get the signal from the people on shore, and you pull this and give it a good jerking motion.